My granny never used to let me eat prawns. If we ever caught any while we were out fishing, we used to have to throw them back in the water. But now people like eating prawns and consider them quite a treat.
They're a bit hard to peel sometimes, though. Would you like to try some? Everyone you speak to seems to have a different name for prawns. Some people call them shrimps or scampi, others call them crustaceans. Scientists call them nephrops. I'll just stick to calling them prawns. They belong to the shellfish family. Prawns are different from some other kinds of fish because they can survive for a few hours if they're taken out of water. You find prawns living at the bottom of sea lochs and the sea. They're not a bit fussy about what they eat. In fact, they're scavengers. They live off any kind of food. Bits of dead fish will do just fine. They've got little legs and they can walk backwards as well as forwards. The only bit of a prawn that we eat is the tail, this bit here. It's what ends up being sold in the shops, most often peeled like these ones. So how is it that we can buy prawns in the shops now, if we want, when people like our grandparents wouldn't even dream of eating them years ago? Part of the reason lies in tourism. My granny and most people her age didn't ever go outside Scotland on holiday. But when holidays like this to Spain and other countries became popular, people were able to try out food that the locals liked eating, including seafood. And they could see what was on sale in the shops and markets. So some food that other people hadn't tasted before became popular. This is Shieldaig, a small village in the West Highlands of Scotland. It's in a very remote part of the country. It's on the edge of Loch Torridon, which flows into the sea beyond. There are only a few hundred people living here, and there's not much work available. The sea loch used to be full of herring and people used to fish for them. But they fished too much and now there are none left. There are prawns here though, and some people make a living fishing for them now. This is Iona Livingston. Her dad is a prawn fisherman and they live in the village. One of her favourite hobbies is swimming. She also likes to spend the day out helping her dad and her uncle on their boat. Today I'm joining Iona and her friend David as they go out to catch prawns.
Iona? Yep, all aboard.
On the way out to collect prawns, there's a lot of work to be done. While her dad's at the wheel, Iona's uncle Dick gets the bait ready. Prawns love herring, so that's what Dick gets ready to put in the creels.
think I can have a go?
You can cut some big.
Does it matter what size they are?
In about 4 pieces, depending on the type of fish.
I'll use this as a base.
Yep. We need about 100 for each fleet.
About 100?
Yes, so you're going to do it fairly quickly.
Well, I don't know if I'm quite quick enough, so I'll just pass on to yourself again. You want the gloves?
No, thanks. Years of experience.
Iona's dad left creels with herring in them at the bottom of the water a few days ago. They know where to find the creels because they're attached by a rope to a pink buoy. The rope is really long. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the sea loch where the creels are sitting. Once he's found the buoy, he's able to use a hoist to help pull up the rope. But there's still a lot of hard work ahead, emptying all the creels. You don't get many prawns in a creel. I think it's going to take a while to fill that basket up, but there are 100 creels altogether to be emptied, so they should get a reasonable number by the end of the day. They're much bigger than I thought they would be. I've never seen any as big as these ones in my local fish shop. As soon as the creels are brought on board, Kenny passes them to Dick, and he gets them ready for their next journey into the water. They usually leave them in the water for about 3 days, hoping that quite a few prawns will smell the herring they put in as bait and go looking for it. The creels here have to be stacked up in a careful order. You've got to make sure the ropes don't get twisted, or else you get a bit mixed up when it's time to throw them back overboard.
I wonder who's going to stack them the best.
Yes,
By the time nearly all the creels have been emptied, they've collected quite a lot of prawns. Now, although the prawns can survive for a few hours out of the water, they're in better condition if you keep them in water. Kenny's got a water tank on board where he puts the prawns after he's caught them. These prawns have a long journey ahead of them.
How long does the whole operation of taking the creels and baiting them and putting them back out take?
it takes us about 3/4 of an hour to haul a fleet aboard.
And how many times a day do you have to do that?
Well, we usually haul about 7 or 8 fleets a day, and each fleet's 100 creels long.
And the haul you caught just now, would you be right in saying that you'd be quite happy with
yes,
that amount?
that was quite good. That was about 20 kilos of prawns from that fleet.
Now that all the creels have been emptied, they have to go back into the sea loch. Dick throws them in. It looks easy, but you've got to make sure you leave enough space between them when you throw them back in, or else they'll all end up on top of each other. Iona's dad steers the boat at just the right speed to give Dick time to do the job correctly. It's a much quicker process throwing them out into the water than it is collecting them in again. And last of all, out goes the buoy. You can't afford to forget that, or you would never find them again. Next job is to sort out the prawns.
We grade the prawns into 3 sizes. That's how the factory like to have them.
Why is it, Kenny, that you throw back the ones that are very small?
Well, the market is the price we get for the small ones is very poor, and we feel if we put back the small ones, then they're going to grow into future stock. Because they're caught in the creels, they're in very good condition and they're alive, so that they live quite well after they've been put back.
And presumably prices are better for the larger prawns?
Yes, the big ones are worth approximately 3 times as much as the small ones, so we prefer a few big ones.
When Kenny catches prawns in his creels, he can put back the ones that are either too small or the ones which have eggs attached, so that they can grow into big prawns for next year. But is there any reason for some people trying to conserve the numbers of prawns in the sea if they don't all do it? I'll just throw these back.
While Kenny and Dick spend the rest of the day fishing for prawns in Shieldig, other boats are bringing in their catches of prawns to land in the fishing port of Mallaig. Mallaig is a bit further down the west coast from Shieldig. It's a busy port and prawns are big business here. More prawns are landed here than any other port in Scotland. These little scavengers which the fishermen used to throw back in the water are now worth a lot of money to them. There's a constant stream of boats coming in to land in Mallaig, but they don't catch their prawns the same way as Iona's dad catches his. The boats they use are trawlers, and they catch their prawns in nets which they drag along the seabed, so they don't need to use any bait. The nets disturb the sand on the seabed where the prawns live. That frightens the prawns and they try to run away. This one's running backwards, but it's hard to escape because they can't keep ahead of the net for long, and they end up having to jump into it to avoid being squashed. Sometimes the nets have to slow down when they hit something in the way. That's what makes scenes like this familiar in the harbour. Most fishermen have to do some repair work to their nets after a fishing trip. It helps if you're good at sewing. If no one liked eating prawns, none of the fishermen would bother to catch them. They only catch what people are willing to pay money for. Prawns are more popular abroad than here, so lots of them get sold to other countries. The trawlers that are landing prawns here in Mallaig don't just come from nearby on the west coast. You can tell where they're from by the registration number on the boat. FR is Fraserburgh, BCK is Bucky, KY is Kirkcaldy. So these west coast prawns are being fished by fishing boats that come right round from the east coast. Some of the boats which land here have a mixture of whitefish and prawns on board, but they catch them separately in different nets.
Some trawlers have only recently started to fish for prawns. That's because they're not allowed to catch as many cod and haddock as they used to. But there are no laws to limit the amount of prawns which can be caught. Do you think there should be?
At Millport on the Isle of Cumbrae, there are scientists at work checking to see that Scottish prawns are healthy and well fed.
Length 38.0.
When so many of them are being fished out of the seas, we have to be sure that they're in good condition. So the scientists keep a careful lookout for any signs of illness or change in size.
53.8.
These ones are all healthy specimens.
Carapace width 30.2.
30.2. Okay.
There's a company based in Skye which buys prawns from fishermen on the island and on the mainland, including Iona's dad. Every day, vans set out from the factory to collect prawns from the creel fishermen. The van drivers are in contact with the fishermen and can find out the latest news on the day's catch.
This is the Fram here on today, Steve, over.
Yes, Ken. Can you give me a time for arrival at the destination and how many prawns you've got over?
We'll be in our Instag at about 5 o'clock.
We have about 90 kilos, something like that.
Over.
That's fine, Fram. 90 kilos of prawns and arriving about 5 o'clock. Over.
When they've collected all the prawns, the vans drive back to the factory in Broadford. In the office, once they've worked out how many prawns they've collected for the day, the next task is to decide who's to get them.
Sí, señor. Sí, sí. Mira, ¿cuánto caja tú quieres por la fin de semana?
There are lots of people in Spain who are willing to pay a lot of money for the prawns that Iona's dad and other fishermen caught today. They have to work out if there are enough to go round for everyone who wants to buy them. In the factory, they're sorting out the prawns that will be frozen, then sent to Spain. None of the prawns that are bought by the company on Skye are going to be eaten in Scotland. They all go to other countries in Europe, like Spain, where people really love eating prawns. Spanish people are willing to pay a lot of money for the best Scottish prawns. Early in the morning, 12 hours after they were landed, Iona's dad's prawns are on the last leg of their journey. They're going to be flown out of Inverness Airport, so they reach their customers in Europe as quickly as possible. Inside every one of these boxes are prawns that are still alive. They're kept in special water tanks so that they arrive at the end of their journey still alive and fresh.
The prawns are now being loaded and they're on their way to Spain. But what do you think would happen to people like Iona's father if the Spanish weren't so fond of eating them?
Fish and chips, great. But 70 years ago, this was the fast food that people ate. Salt herring and potatoes. And just like fish and chips, we can eat it with our fingers. Ugh. Oh, it's horrible. I'm glad I didn't live 70 years ago. Herring swim in big shoals under the sea. They like each other's company and always stick together. They're always on the move and they'll go up to eat plankton near the surface of the sea when they're hungry. They don't eat other fish, only plankton, the tiniest creatures in the sea, which you can only see like this through a microscope. A shoal of herring can eat many millions of plankton in one dinner time. Herring need to keep moving to find food. That's probably why they travel such long distances. They can swim thousands of miles in their lifetime, and they can live to be 20 years old if they're not caught in the nets first. Their bodies are round and smooth and streamlined, the perfect shape for endless swimming. Herring belong to the pelagic fish group. The other pelagic fish we eat is mackerel. Pelagic fish are different from whitefish because they're quite oily. If you eat them, they're a good source of vitamins and calories. Years ago, the seas around our coastline were full of herring. This made it quite cheap and very popular. A large fleet of boats used to go out to catch the vast herring shoals. The herring moved down the coast from the Shetland Isles in the north all the way down to Yarmouth and Felixstowe in the south of England. The boats in those days were steam drifters. They travelled out to the fishing grounds about 40 miles away and prepared to put their nets out. They turned the engines off and they would just drift along with the tide, waiting for the herring to swim into their nets.
Through the stormy seas and the living gale, just to earn your daily bread, your day run. Though the hours are long and the kicks are many, still you following the shores o' heaven. Oh, well, I earned my keep and I paid my way, and I won the gear that I was wearing, though I used to sleep standing on me feet. Still I dream about the shores of heaven.
When they brought the herring to the harbour, they passed it on to a team of women who gutted the herring. Then they preserved it by packing it in salt. There were no freezers available then. These women were known as fisher lassies. This film was made in Yarmouth, but the fisher lassies were all Scottish. Some of them came from Shetland. On Shetland today, people remember the times when they worked gutting herring. One of them, Lizzie Robertson, told me about the journey to Yarmouth.
One time I went, it were 22 hours from Shetland to Aberdeen. And some of the girls had to be helped off of the boat with seasickness. Oh, it was terrible. We had to go to Yarmouth on the train, which I like it. I liked the train. We got 10 shillings a week my first year. But the older ones, it has been the years before, they got 12 and 6.
The fisher lassies worked at an amazing rate. They used to gut between 60 and 70 of these every minute.
They worked long hours too, sometimes up to 18 hours a day for hardly any money. A tea set was all that Lizzie had to show for her hard work when she returned home. Working conditions today are much better. They're preparing mackerel here. 70 years ago, no one would eat it, but now it's become popular as herring is less plentiful. Most of the fish is exported. There's a boat in the harbour waiting to ship herring and mackerel to Japan. In the summer months, there are lots of visitors to Lerwick, the capital of Shetland. Some people are tourists. Others are working here because of the herring, like Fiona MacDonald.
I come from Ullapool and I work for Falmouth Fish Selling Company. We basically travel around after the fish. As the fish are moving, we move around the coast with them. We are in Shetland at the moment for the herring season.
Fiona arranges to sell fish for boats, including the Chrysandra, which is leaving Lerwick to head for the fishing grounds near Shetland. The captain is Andrew Tate. On the way out, he passes his brother's boat.
We're from the northeast of Scotland, but the ship was built in Norway. And Fraserburgh, the port we come from. Most of the year we're catching mackerel, but from June to about the end of September we're fishing herring. Usually we're fishing around about Shetland. Catching herring is usually you're not so far away, so you're usually hopefully in every couple of days.
It only takes 4 hours to reach the fishing ground where they hope to find herring. Andrew has lots of sophisticated sonar equipment to show him if there's any movement under the water. He's not the only one. All the other boats have similar machines. It's early evening and the Chrysandra isn't the only boat here. There are lots of others in the same spot, hoping a shoal of herring will pass by. But the Chrysandra is the first to put her nets in the water. It doesn't take long, maybe 20 minutes. They drop the nets like a curtain in a large circle, hoping that, as they do so, the shoal of herring is swimming into it. When the circle is complete, they tighten the bottom of the net so that it closes like a purse, which is why these nets are called purse nets. If the nets have been put in the water and closed at just the right time, then they'll have trapped the fish inside. Soon they're ready to bring them in and see what they've caught. Pulling in the net takes about an hour.
Well, we left the home ground in the month of June, and for canny shields we soon were bearing. Weigh 100 cran o' the silver darts that we'd taken from the shoals o' herring. When you're up on deck, you're a fisherman. You can swear and show a manly bearing. Take your turn on deck, weigh the other fellas, while you're following the shoals o' herring.
But in spite of all their efforts, the total catch comes to just one jellyfish. It's the yellow boat that's caught the shoal of herring. For Andrew Tate, there's a long night ahead, looking for another mark, a sign on the echo sounder that a shoal of herring is passing by. These machines act for him like eyes and ears under the water, but they're not cheap.
To keep up with all the new electronics is very expensive. Well, you've got to weigh out the advantages of putting in new machines against the price of the fish now. The fish price seems to have stopped going up, it just seems to be stuck at the same level.
The ship travels up and down off the Shetland coast through the night. It's the following afternoon before they detect any signs of the next shoal and put the nets out for a second time. This time everyone's hoping their timing is right. And it looks as though they're going to be lucky. The nets feel very heavy. This time they've caught a huge shoal. They get the fish out of the sea and onto the boat using a big pump. But it's not working properly. And there's a hole in the net. The fish are escaping through it. These gannets are making the most of the unexpected treat and dive straight in to claim their share. Help is at hand, though. The skipper's uncle, who is fishing nearby, comes alongside the Cassandra and lets them use their pump to get the fish on board. These two boats share the profits between them. It makes sense for them to help each other out. They store the fish in cold water tanks on the boat to keep them fresh. The boat has limits to restrict how many herring they bring back, so they have to make sure they don't catch more than their quota. With the catch safely on board, they can head straight for Lerwick, 4 hours away. 10 years ago, no one was allowed to catch herring. Scientists were worried that there would soon be none left in the sea if they didn't get a rest from the fishermen. Today, there are far fewer boats catching herring than there used to be. They get back to Lerwick 36 hours after they set out, but they'll have to get their pump repaired before they can go out again. As soon as they reach the harbour, the fisheries officers board the boat to check the size of the catch. They're well within the limits, and Fiona MacDonald has arranged a buyer for the Cassandra's fish.
This is the factory where they're going to process the herring, but it's no ordinary factory because it's on board a ship.
The ship is called the Younger Guard. It doesn't catch fish. It buys herring from fishing boats like the Cassandra.
There are over 50 ships like this off the coast of Lerwick. They're called Klondikers. I wonder if they ever get homesick.
These ships come from Eastern Europe. Most of them are from Russia, but others are from Bulgaria, Poland and Romania. There are nearly 7,000 people working on the Klondikers. The fish are transferred from the fishing boat directly onto the Klondiker. There's no need for a fish market here. There are 120 people altogether working on this Klondiker. Only 4 are women. People in Eastern Europe have always liked herring. They eat much more of it than we do. The captain, Horst Vensky, took me around the ship.
Herring is a main food or the main thing to supply the population in Germany. I think the people like it.
Below deck, they work in shifts, taking it in turns to clean the herring before it is frozen.
And fiddle-wee-dee with a herring's tail, fiddle-wee-dee with a herring's tail. We'll mak it a ship be a beautiful sail, herring's tail, ship be a sail, herring's eyes, puddings and pies, herring's head, luff and reef, and all sorts of things. For all the fish that swim in the sea, the herring it is the fish for me. Sing fa-la-la-li-do, fa-la-la-li-do, fa-la-la-li-do-li-day.
These workers on the production line have lots of machinery to help them process fish. Nothing is wasted. The heads, tails and guts will be turned into fish oil.
This isn't just a factory, it's also home for the people who work on board, sometimes for months on end. I wonder what's for dinner. And if you need treatment, there's also a hospital on board.
When you want to get off the Klondiker, you have to take another boat, so it's on with a survival suit. Then into the dinghy. It takes half an hour to get to Lerwick. There's a constant stream of small boats going in and out of Lerwick, carrying the factory workers from the Klondikers. They come to Lerwick for sightseeing and shopping trips. The Shetlanders make foreign visitors welcome with messages for them in their own languages. There are plenty of gifts for sale in the shops. So souvenirs like these are going to end up in German and Russian homes, just like Lizzie Robertson's souvenir tea set from Great Yarmouth.
Where nets and gear were faring on a wild and wasteful ocean. It's there in the deep that we harvest and reap our bread.
I think I'm going to order something really special today, some salmon. Could I have some salmon and banter, please?
Enjoy your meal.
Thank you. It's great. It's really nice. You find salmon in most Scottish rivers, including this one. It's called the Spey. When a salmon swims up the river, it's returning from a long journey of around 3 years out at sea, where it's grown big and strong. The anglers who go fishing for salmon say it's the best fish you could ever be lucky enough to catch. But you can't just turn up and fish here. You have to buy a permit first. And for the best beats of the river, they're quite expensive. People pay a lot of money to buy a stretch of river. You need the right gear, because when the salmon fights to get away, you might end up right up to your waist in the river. On the best beats, you can get a gillie to help you. Gillies look after the rods, and they'll give anglers advice about where you'll catch the best fish.
I think we've got a good chance, especially early in the morning.
But some anglers, like Mr. Croft here, don't need much advice, as they know this stretch of the river well.
Yeah, well, they're nearer the surface, and once the bright sunshine comes out, stays out, they go down to the bottom. Much more difficult to do.
I am very lucky, because today, for the first time, I'm being allowed to go fishing for salmon. I can't afford to pay for a gillie, but William knows the river well, and he's offered to look after me. Tell me if you see any salmon, I'll just go after them. Okay. Here it goes. I think that one's after my line. The other anglers are very patient. They seem happy to spend all day out in the river. In Scotland, we have some of the best rivers for catching salmon in the whole world. Visitors come to Scotland on holiday just to fish for salmon. It's actually taken quite a long time, really.
You're doing pretty well.
I wonder how the others are getting on. Well, they've had a very good day. 4 salmon between 3 of them. No wonder they're pleased. This is the biggest one. It weighs more than 6 kilos. Right, I give up. I'm going home. William's not very impressed.
Hey, you're glad to get those waders off.
I am actually. Do a wee rest just now. I'm exhausted, and I didn't catch a single fish. There must be an easier way to catch salmon. There is. If you go to where the river meets the sea, you find lots of salmon returning from a long journey out at sea, back to the river they were born in. They'll only go back to the river if it's clean. You don't find salmon in polluted rivers. These men catch salmon for a living. They put nets into the water to trap the fish as they return to the river. In a few minutes, they can pull in around half a dozen. It's much quicker than angling. There are strict limits on who can catch salmon using nets. Only a few people own the rights to net salmon. you think that's fair? Some of the salmon have strange marks on them. These holes were made fighting with a seal that wanted to eat the salmon. It escaped from the seal, only to be caught in the net. Seals love eating salmon. They lie in wait for them as they come back from the sea. But salmon eat sea creatures too. They love prawns, and they eat so many of them that their own flesh turns pink. For the salmon who manage to avoid being eaten or caught in nets, getting beyond the mouth of the river isn't the end of their long journey. They're heading a long way upriver, close to where they were born a few years ago. But rivers aren't level. They have to cross a few obstacles to get further up. Even waterfalls this size won't put them off. They try to leap up them. They might not make it the first time, but they'll keep going until they do. The name salmon comes from an old Latin word. It means leaper. On their amazing journey up the river, the salmon don't eat a thing. They just live off the fat they've stored in their bodies. When they finally arrive far upstream in a quiet pool, they must be worn out. They've come here to find a mate. Females lay eggs and the males fertilize them. They will hatch into the next generation of salmon. Female salmon lay thousands of eggs, but not many of them will survive to become adults. Lots of these eggs will be eaten by other fish looking for food. The female salmon tries to hide the eggs under rocks in the riverbed to give them some protection. She probably won't be here when they hatch into little fish. Most salmon die after they've laid their eggs. Very few ever make the long journey back out to sea again. The eggs they leave behind hatch into tiny little fish. They develop and grow in the river. After about 3 years there, their skin starts to turn silvery, and we call them smolts. Smolts don't like living in the river. Without anyone telling them, they somehow feel they need to find salt water. So they head out to sea where they grow bigger and bigger, and they swim thousands of miles in the 2 or 3 years that they're there. I thought that salmon was very expensive, but it's actually just the same price as other fish. You see lots of salmon on sale in the shops, at quite a reasonable price, but most of them don't come from rivers. They're from fish farms. In the past few years, lots of lochs in the Highlands have started to be used by fish farmers to grow salmon. If you're going to have a fish farm, one of the things you'll need is clean water. There are plenty of clean lochs in the Highlands, so that's where you find most fish farms. Not many people live in the West Highlands of Scotland, and there's not a lot of work either. The Johnson family live near a fish farm at Loch Damph. It's quite far away from the main road, so the school bus comes to the house to pick Debbie up. Debbie's sister Laura goes to secondary school, but it's too far away to make the journey every day. She can only come home at weekends. When the weekend comes, they can go exploring in the woods. Laura showed me how to cross the rope bridge over the river that's behind the house. She's much better than me at crossing the bridge. Stuart offered to take me out by boat to part of the fish farm where he works.
You reckon there's going to be plenty doing when we get out there?
Hopefully, by God.
This is where the salmon that are nearly fully grown live. In fact, they spend most of their lives in the cages here. They don't need to worry about hunting for food because they're fed a regular supply. It doesn't look very exciting to me, but the salmon seem to like it. Life for a farmed salmon starts off as it does in the river, with an egg. After the egg is hatched and the fish are a few weeks old, they're moved. Their new home is in one of these tanks. If these little fish were in a river, lots of them would be dead by now, either because they couldn't find enough food or because bigger fish ate them up. When they're a couple of months old, these fish are moved to the freshwater site at Loch Damp, where they stay in cages for about a year. Some people think that the cages aren't nice and that they spoil the scenery of the area. Do you think that's important? As soon as the skin on the fish starts to turn silvery, it's a sign that they're ready to head out to the salt water of the sea. But they don't swim there. They're going to be moved by helicopter in one of these special buckets.
How long are they in the containers for?
Roughly about 5 minutes, because roughly 5 miles to our site.
And does it affect them in any way that there are so many in the one container together?
Not really, because they're in such a short time, and we slightly anaesthetize them to calm them down during the flight.
There are nearly 4,000 young salmon in this container, and they're just about to be moved by helicopter from the fresh water here to the salt water in the sea.
I would hate to travel in a bucket underneath a helicopter. It's just as well that they're asleep for the journey and don't know anything about it. When they're dropped into the salt water, they soon wake up. They stay here till they're fully grown. They're different from wild salmon because they don't ever go back to the fresh water. There are 40 people altogether, including Stuart, who work on this fish farm.
I wonder what people like Stuart would work at if there was no fish farm here. Would they be able to live here at all?
They must be hungry. Ah, they were eat up peckish. Stone bags, 25-kilo bags.
The salmon in the fish farm cages are kept much closer together than the salmon who move freely in the wild. When Stuart feeds the fish, it's not just food they're getting. They're also getting drugs to prevent disease, because disease can spread quickly if they're in a big group. Just like at school when one person gets a cold, and soon nearly everyone catches it. The food also contains a dye to turn their flesh pink. Wild salmon get their pink colour from eating prawns, but farm salmon would be this grey colour if they didn't eat a pink dye in their food. Another problem facing farmed salmon is sea lice. These little parasites eat into their flesh, and they're hard to get rid of. Wild salmon get sea lice too, but they fall off when they return to the freshwater of the river. Farmed salmon never go back to freshwater, so the only way to get rid of the lice is to use strong poison. Conservationists complain that the poison pollutes the sea. The fish farmers are trying to find another solution to this problem.
I'm not too sure about the next part because it's on the boat behind me that they kill the fish.
They suck the salmon out of their cages and up this tube.
So this is where it all happens. Is it not going to hurt them?
No. There's gas running through the water in this tank, so they just go to sleep. No pain whatsoever.
By the time they kill them, they've already been put to sleep. Then they pack them in ice before they're sent off to the shops.
So if you were a salmon, would you prefer to be a wild salmon or a farmed salmon?